We have a motion on the minutes.
Motion to approve the minutes.
Second.
Second. All in favor, signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed? Motion carries, minutes are approved. Is there any unfinished business?
There's unfinished business of the stuff that we wanted to continue from previous code sections.
Yep.
But since Justin isn't here today, we thought we should table it for the next meeting.
Those are the structural ones.
Yep, which is the 24th. I think what's,
Yeah, and I wouldn't mind seeing that even tabled to the one after that, because I'm not here for the 24th. And there were some of those items that I'd like to be involved with when it happens, so if that's okay
Yeah.
with everybody.
I don't see a reason why not.
But, okay. All right, so nothing further, we'll start with the new business and the review of the International Property Maintenance Code, all chapters.
Aye.
Morning.
Morning.
Morning. I'm John Ahrens. I'm one of the guys that enforces the International Property Maintenance Code. There are some changes, as always. Just to preface it a little bit, the Property Maintenance Code in Fargo, typically we use it for rental housing. And, but the scope of the code is for any building, any property, any structure, any premises has to be maintained. And that's why some of the changes, when I get towards the end, some of the changes are not like you would think for a rental. They are for like any building. And this year they threw in a bunch of stuff out of the fire code that is in the property maintenance code now to keep any building maintained, not just apartments and stuff. So that's what the major changes at the end of this chapter or code are. So on page 1, the first thing is to amend, as we always do. The jurisdiction is Fargo. These are essentially fill-in-the-blank stuff, depending on your jurisdiction. So we're amending 101.1 to say the city of Fargo for the jurisdiction. 102.3 is, rather than list all these different codes, we go with all applicable ordinance adopted by the city of Fargo. So some of these, it could be the zoning code that we enforce too. So it just goes with all of the adopted and ordinances. Page 2, 103.5, we have a reinspection fee charges that if we go to a place, they don't do any, well, they have violations. We come back again, violations aren't corrected. So then we had an initial and a reinspection, and if nothing's done, then we have the option after that to start feeing $100 for every reinspection. Page 3. The code has changed, 105.2, added some wordage in there just to make it a little more readable. It's it's nothing that's makes it more clear, I guess. And if anybody's got any questions, just speak up. Page 6, we're going to amend again the first sentence of 11.2 regarding the board to say that rather than 3 members, it's 5 members. And then 11.2.1 is, instead of the chief appointed authority, it's the Board of City Commissioners. and they're going to appoint one or more alternative members. And these, again, are amendments that we've always had. Page 7, another amendment for the board, just saying that the 4 appointed board members have to have a concurring vote there. 112.4, we changed the amount to read the subject to the penalties prescribed by law. Typically, at the end of our ordinance, we always have a $1,000 fine. Page 9, 201.3 is amended, and the codes that we adopt are listed below, and they're not, like the plumbing code is not quite the International Plumbing Code. We use the state stuff and that sort of stuff. So that's what the changes are in that section that's typical. On page 10, 202 in the definitions, they just reworded some of the definitions. Public way, labeled, and structure, those are just changed to match up with what the building code has, residential code and that, just so they're all consistent. Page 11, 302.4 is amended. And that's on the weed section, and it's in the municipal code as an ordinance, so we cite that specifically, 11.11-08. And so the weeds go with that section. And that section just says it's 8 inches before it's a nuisance. Page 13 is amended. And 304.14, all we do is put in the dates where insect screens are required, April 1st to October 31st. Page 22 now. Water systems, that's a new section that was added. And I'm not aware of, I haven't seen any in Fargo. But this is like if you're going to have non-potable water and, I don't know, use it to water something else, or you want to store it and that. And it talks about how you have to treat the system, and if you're going to abandon it, what you have to do to abandon, say, a grain barrel tank underground and that sort of stuff, that you can't just walk away from it. Page 23. 602.3, and again, we amend that just to put the dates in there for heat supply. And you gotta have the heat supply between September 15th to June 1st. And again, for 602.4, for the occupied workspaces, they have to have heat too during the same dates. Then we go to 603.1. And again, in their mechanical, they just threw in a couple more words just for clarity. But 603.2, we used to amend and take out the exemption there. We used to delete the exemption about non-vented. And the mechanical code switched this year. And we're going to be consistent with them, so we're going to take out the exemption too, or keep the exemption, so that if fuel burning equipment and appliances are labeled for it, that they can be used. And there's a lengthy list of stuff in order to be labeled. And the mechanical code, they just said, well, if it's approved by, why don't we? It's been in the code for some times, and we've always amended that out. So this year they said, let's put it in. And so this is just to be consistent with them that we're going to put it back in. And then we get to the big changes, significant changes. And it starts on page 27. And 703.1, fire resistive rated assemblies. It's whatever was in, you see the F next to all of this stuff? It's all in the fire code. So the fire inspectors used to inspect for all that. Now, they got it in mind too, so we will inspect for that too. And hopefully refer it to them. But we do have authority now to utilize this. Not that we couldn't before, because it always said we could use any ordinance, municipal, and fire code was adopted. So we could use it before, but it's a roundabout way. Now it's specifically put in here. And so you got fire resistive rated assemblies. And it's just the typical maintenance that's required on all of these, wherever you have required separations in that. 703.3 is the maintenance for it. 703.3.1 is required blocking and draft stopping. And again, all of this stuff has been in the fire code, and now it's in our code too. So it's really not anything that wasn't required before, but it's now that we have the authority to write it up too.
John, under what your inspections were doing, were you guys looking for, say, someone cut out sheetrock in a firewall or that type of thing in the past? Or is this just kind of saying, let's make sure that maintenance inspectors or property inspectors are doing it?
Well, this section here now, some of these sections are going to refer you that the building owner is responsible to do regular checking of fire doors and keep a written record.
Okay.
So that rather than have us go through and check every single door, or even a random check of doors is what we typically do, they're supposed to have a written record saying that they checked them on this date and everything was wonderful, or not, and what they've done in that. If we have, obviously, if we have penetrations and resistive construction, we write it up. We always have. This is just more specific. And when it gets down to, well, first let me hit the 703.7 vertical shafts. We would like to amend that to delete it. And this refers you into Chapter 11 of the International Fire Code, and that's the section on existing buildings. So this would apply to existing buildings, but the fire code doesn't, fire department doesn't adopt all of Chapter 11. The only part of Chapter 11 that they adopt is the carbon monoxide section. So we want to be consistent and not require vertical shafts to be closed off and all that sort of stuff, because it would be a significant impact on a lot of places, you know. So we hope to amend that to delete it. And the rest of the 704, the inspecting, testing, and maintenance, it's just routine stuff that is always required, but now we have it specifically in our book. And on page, I think it's 28, yeah, there's a list of all the fire protection systems that now we could, we see a sprinkler system, typically we would say, well, fire deals with that. Fire checks the sprinkler systems. Fire has the reports on that. Now we can say, need to see reports. This isn't working. But we did write it up before. If we had a leaky sprinkler head, we would write that up. If we had something that was wrong with the sprinkler, if we noticed it, we would write it up. So somewhere, somebody must have gotten into a little contest of who had jurisdiction or something, so they specifically put it in our code now, so that we can specifically deal with those two. But again, it talks about halon systems and all that, because this is for every building. The bank building has a computer center that's got, this code actually, you gotta keep the bank building maintained too. Every building's gotta be maintained, and so that's why they throw this. Will we be using it much? Policy is that typically we do rental housing. We do complaints. You know, we're not specifically fires going in there and doing their annual inspections or, so they're typically catching this stuff, but now it's just in our code.
Is there anything that was moved out of fire all the way into you guys that you guys might have to notice and tell them about if that's how it works?
I don't think so. John brought this to my attention when he was first reviewing this, and so we did go through this to make sure that everything was working together. You know, I think that in practice in the city, this doesn't mean that we're going to start duplicating efforts. The way the inspections are occurring is going to continue to occur the same way. We inspect all commercial buildings and then apartments that are 3 or more units that have a common area, whereas the inspections office is going to also pick up everything beyond that. So even if it's 2 units with no common area, you know, that if that got a complaint, that would go over to the inspections office. So we're not really looking to overlap or start conflicting. I think it was really just a matter of, for a jurisdiction that maybe didn't have the ability to pull that across, it's now pretty clear. I mean, I think it's pretty easy to make the argument that we're all inspecting for the city of Fargo, who adopts these, so they can send whichever agent they want out to go enforce it.
Yeah, I would imagine in some jurisdictions where their fire service is not full-time and fully staffed, that, and they have property inspectors, that they're gonna be doing a lot of that fire inspection
Yeah,
things, so.
or even like protection districts or something to that
Yeah.
effect might make another layer of complication in there.
Yeah. Okay,
So the redundancy was pretty much always there, but it's more formalized now?
Yeah, so.
In a roundabout way,
Roundabout.
because the adoption at the beginning talks about that this code applies to any ordinance of the city, all ordinances, and the fire code is an ordinance. The adoption of the fire code, the adoption of plumbing code, the adoption of all this stuff is an ordinance. And so if we saw something wrong, we'd write it out.
yeah. And I would think, you know, I know that Fargo and Moorhead's jurisdictions pretty much run the same. West Fargo and Dilworth don't, because they have a different type of a fire service. So, but this code is international, so it follows everybody. In Fargo and Moorhead, it's always been delineated what department did what. There wasn't any buildings that weren't covered, but it's just what department covered that type of structure.
Okay, page 29 is where the addition for fire protection systems, that we got the authority to maintain those and check those out, ends. And then on page 30, it talks about the smoke detection systems, and that was in the code before. That's just been renumbered. The smoke detection systems were there before, so that's no change except for the numbering that they didn't mention. But then once you get down to, at the bottom of page 31, you got the carbon monoxide systems, or alarms and detection. That's going to be new. And that refers you to the fire code. And then from there, it also talks about Well, it goes to 1103.9, which is the only section of the existing building in the fire code that was adopted. So it would retro anything that's got an attached garage, fuel burning equipment, a fireplace, and all that to require now smoke detectors. Anything that's existing and is in compliance now, rather than wire in the system, they can use battery-operated ones now. This would change it, that require. Apartments too, it would require detection systems in certain areas. And say you got a water heater or something in a mechanical room, you can put a carbon monoxide detector and just hook it into the alarm system. And that would suffice in that. So there's going to be some changes as far as, and the code, that section 705.2 is new too, but that line should extend all the way down to show that it is new also.
John, are you saying that the central alarm systems are the ones that report are gonna be required to have carbon monoxide added to them? Is that what this is getting to?
Well, they can put in a battery operated, or they can put in one to the system.
Okay.
And it would make way more sense to add one to the system, because who's gonna walk by the hall and here in a mechanical room, hear this buzzing going off? So we would recommend that, but the code just says anything that's existing can be battery operated. Anything that's new is gonna have, and they already have it in the residential code and the building code, so anything new. As far as residential goes, 1 and 2 family dwellings, that would only be if they alter or do an interior remodel or something like that, that they're required. But apartment buildings, it would be required, existing apartment buildings. And we would certainly recommend that one. The life expectancy too of the smoke detectors, it says if it's battery operated now, has to be switched out every 10 years. I think Moorhead's been doing that for some time. So now that's in there, and we would recommend that if you switch it out, if it's 10 years old, battery operated, that they put in a combo carbon monoxide smoke. But it's not required unless they actually do a remodel.
Are there some of the new detectors that have got a 10-year battery life in them? I think I've seen some of the new detectors that they'd switch to would have a 10-year battery life system, so basically you run it till the battery goes bad and then you put a new one in, which,
Yeah,
I know
they got
for,
10-year lithium battery things now, yeah.
for rental properties, that'd be a big thing as far as making sure that they're consistently detected, because a lot of times people pull the battery or do whatever on them and never replace them until you show up on inspection.
They pull the batteries out within, I've seen it in 4 hours. The owner came in, put in a battery. We come back to check it. And he said, I knew we had an inspection this afternoon. I just put it in this morning. The battery's already out. So it is what it is, you know. But they're try, and a 10-year battery is way better than
Standard
a little
9
9-volt that lasts maybe a year, maybe 2, you know.
Okay.
But, yeah, the code is going to say, where is it? Oh, 704.7, that's the new section that says, in 1 and 2 family dwellings, it shall be replaced not more than 10 years from the date of manufacture marked on the unit. Or if you can't determine it, then it's got to get changed out. So, that's the gist of the changes. Any questions? I know it was really exciting, wasn't it? Yeah.
Yeah. I just
One-
want to point something out to the board members, if they're not aware of it, but detectors as they age lose their ability to detect quickly, and if they get dirty. So that's kind of what forces this, is that it gives you a quicker reaction to smoke, and that's why they say, let's replace them after 10 years.
Now, if you want to, I could go through every single fire code thing that's already in the fire code and probably already adopted, but I think that's kind of just redundant, and it's not all that exciting stuff here, okay? But I could if you wanted to. I was a fire guy, you know, for a little while.
Riveting.
we're-
No, riveting. Riveting.
It is riveting. It's just fascinating, yeah.
Okay, thank you, John. Okay. I think Chris had already talked about item B under the new business, so do we have any other staff reports at this time? Okay, hearing none, do we have a motion to adjourn?
I'll motion.
I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
We are adjourned.